Jonathan Pauly was born in June 1962 in South Charleston, West Virginia. He had a family history in the military and felt an obligation to serve because of the embassy bombing in Beirut. He enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps directly out of high school, eager to serve his country.
Actually, your 8th grade project when you're in junior high, what do you want to be when you grow up? Even when I was a kid, I had this want to be in the military, so it's like something I always really wanted to do. But when I got into high school, I'm not quite as old as dirt, but pretty old. So one of the things that happened when I was in high school was the embassy in Beirut was bombed, and a lot of Marines died, and it was this sort of rallying cry.
Jonathan Pauly served in the Iran-Iraq War as an electrician from 1980 to 1984. During this time, Iran was placing mines in the Strait of Hormuz to attack Kuwait. This was the big deal because the Strait of Hormuz served as a passing point for about 20% of the world's petroleum, which was in high demand at the time. This was threatening to Kuwait, Iraq's ally, prompting the U.S. to send ships to the Persian Gulf, such as the USS Midway, on which Jonathan served.
The USS Midway was an aircraft carrier that was commissioned on September 10, 1945. It featured a revolutionary hull design that put it ahead of all other ships in the U.S. fleet at its time of construction.
I spent time on the Midway. We were up off the Aleutians, and the Aleutians are off the coast of Alaska. The seas are huge up there. In the winter, there are 30-foot swells, and being on an aircraft carrier, the waves would sometimes actually still break over the bow of the carrier. So your escort ships now are all way smaller than you, and you would see the escort ships would actually, so you think of a huge swell, the escort ship would you run into the swell, so you don't run with the swells because that would roll your ship, so you run into the swells, the ship would hit the swell, the entire ship, and we're talking about a ship that's 300, 400, 500 feet long, would disappear all the way up to the bridge into the wave, and then come firing out the other side, completely airborne.
Oh my gosh!
And then slam down into the next wave, and then punch through that one, out the other side, slam.
What was it
for
like inside?
Days.
Oh!
The USS Midway is currently a public museum located in the San Diego harbor.
So the smallest berthing compartment I had was like 11 men, and it was really small, about the size of this table.
Oh my gosh!
Not much bigger than that, and the bunks are like stacked 4 high, and then they're only it's only about this much room between each one, and then there's only about this much room between each row of bunks. So you really. It's great because you have this great camaraderie, but there's really just no escaping people when you're on board the ship.
During the time that Mr. Pauly served, the USS Midway was also stationed in various locations throughout the Pacific, including Japan and the Philippines. They did so to monitor situations of civil unrest.
Oh, look, I got to really visit some amazing places, and again, the ship is typically, when it leaves home port, which was Yokosuka, Japan, it wasn't out more than a couple of weeks most time, and so only the longest I ever spent was about 3 months continually at sea. So we would go to ports all the time. That's the really good way to keep a happy sailor. Go to ports, and so we went to Thailand. I've been to Hong Kong a couple times. We were all over Japan, all over Korea. So we really had, and when we come to port, we might be there for 5 to 7 days. Philippines, I spent a ton of time in the Philippines, and sometimes as much as a couple of months in the Philippines. So we really got a lot of time to, at the time I spoke a little bit of Tagalog, and I spoke a little bit of Japanese and a little bit of Korean, and we were there enough that you could, we certainly could, say hello, we knew how to order drinks, and stuff that we could do. You were out enough, and when you're out on board ship, other guys who do a little bit more would teach you, and so there was times that we knew a little bit of a lot of different Asian languages. Philippines was interesting because when we were in, Ferdinand Marcos was the president, and it was a little bit of a dictatorship. So the country itself was really, probably out of all the countries we visited, was the most economically depressed. Really, I mean, those people, the people in the Philippines wanted to do anything to get out of the Philippines. And to that end, we had a ton of Filipino sailors. Because even today, if you want to fast track your citizenship into the United States, as a foreign citizen, you can join the United States military. And so, gosh, you know, just literally tens of thousands of Filipino men joined and they tend to join the Navy. There were like half our ship was Filipino guys.
Oh, wow.
So like pulling the Filipino port was like them coming to home, you know. And the foods, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you the kind of different foods that I've eaten in my life and the places. And if you're food adventurous, you know, having a long tour of duty in Southeast Asia is great. And you know, I would eat off the carts in the streets, and you know, it never bothered me a bit. You know, we just, you know, have a couple beers and walk up the street and, you know, take a couple meats and, you know, they would grill it right there. And, you know, a little bit like when you're down in Ensenada, Mexico, but, you know, not quite as clean.
Yeah.
He was not aboard the USS Midway. Mr. Polly was stationed at the MCAS, Marine Corps Air Station, El Toro, in Irvine, California.
But throw a quick story. So I was at the base of the rappelling tower, and our whole platoon comes in. And there's a guy that's standing at the top of the tower, and he kind of leans out and he goes, "Are you guys ready to rappel?" And of course you're like, "Yeah, I'm ready to rappel. Are you ready to rappel? Yeah, you're ready to rappel." And the guy just literally leaps off the building, and it just comes flying straight down at you. And just at the last second, he yanks that rope out behind you. You don't even see. And then like it comes to a stop, like about, you know, a foot off the ground, and then just like puts his feet down.
Was
And
it
you're
not?
like, so, you know, they teach you how to rappel, and then you go up and you actually have to start rappelling. Of course, you don't rappel like that. You have you're standing at the top of the tower and you kind of lean out, and then you kind of just jump against the wall all the way down. Yeah, but I mean, you got this like image of this guy jumping off the tower, you know, you can't get it out of your head.
Oh my gosh.
So the guy hooks me all up, and I kind of ease over to the edge, and I'm trying to just kind of work my way off the edge, and the drill instructor goes, "What are you doing?" Grabs me by the collar and just slings me off.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Now there's a guy that's got you on belay, so there's nothing. At the end of the day, there's nothing really going to happen because the guy's like, you know, yanks his rope and he pulls you on belay, and so, you know, you just kind of slam back into the wall. Then you got to get your feet and kind of gather yourself, and you're like, okay, this is a little nuts.
Brought from the Irvine family in 1942, MCAS El Toro was the home of the Marine Corps on the West Coast until it was decommissioned in 1999. Every president from the post-World War II to 1999 landed in Air Force One at the base on their trips to the West Coast. The base was also significant to the community for hosting fun air shows. While Mr. Polly was in the military, he created relationships with his fellow Marines that would last him a lifetime.
Facebook really helps a lot. So,
Yeah.
you know, guys that you haven't talked to in like 20 or 30 years, and now I got out in 1984, so I mean, I've literally been out over 30 years. Is that we can stay pretty good contact with each other through Facebook. So the guys that I actually knew, plus there are, and my unit was called VMFP3. Was they have their own Facebook page, and so anybody that served in that squadron, where they served well before me or well after me, can come and join that Facebook page, and we all have, you know, similar stories. You know, we all served on the Midway, and we all were in Japan, and we all did these kinds of things. So whether you actually served with a guy or not, you a lot of times you find common ground there. So, you know, it's interesting. It's and I just my dad recently passed away in November, and one of my Marine Corps buddies, which I had not seen in literally 25 years, flew to my dad's funeral. So it was you know, it was really nice of him, and you know, the guy I hadn't seen in a super long time. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna come to your dad's funeral." So that's the kind of bonds. I mean, you don't have to see him every day. Those guys they really hold a special place, and I don't feel like it can really be repeated. I mean, You know, it's 4 years of something that, you know, you guys dedicated your lives to. I miss that closeness. It's really hard, you know, the older you get to make those kinds of friends. You know, the time that you have to hold them, it gets shorter all the time. So, you know, to make a friend that you've had for, you know, 40 years, you know, you can only do that when you're young and, you know, doing something like being in the Marine Corps. So, yeah, you miss it, you know.
Now Mr. Pauly is the director of Renegade Race Series and lives with his wife and 3-year-old son in Lake Forest, California. We thank him for the time he took to conduct this interview and for his service in the Marine Force to protect our country.
God for my life, for the stars and stripes, may freedom forever fly.